Stay on Topic, episode 15.5. If you want a topic to listen about or discuss about or any about...
A
boot. Yeah, we're coming to you live from Toronto. Hit us on email at stayontopic111@gmail. You can talk at me on the Twitter machine at Giltastrophe or James
at PostJam9
or Bob
at Bob Ricotta.
And with that said, the man who drinks your milkshake, Bob Ricotta.
How you doing today, Chris?
Very well. And to your left, James Post, who has banned cameras from the Stay on Topic studios.
We've got to. It just makes it a circus.
Well, last week's shirtless episode was...
That was 2 weeks ago where James started just getting awfully revealing.
Yeah. These things happen.
So yeah, the milkshake reference was in reference to Daniel Day-Lewis retiring from acting.
Yes.
Yes. 3-time or 2-time Academy Award-winning actor. But yeah,
of Gangs of New York.
My Left Foot.
Okay.
In Lincoln.
Really? Not Gangs of New York?
Gangs of New York won a bunch of awards.
He did not.
I don't remember, so...
Okay.
I'm sure we'll look that up. Also, last week, the Supreme Court ruled against a law that doesn't allow people to register offensive trademarks. The case, Mattel versus Tam, featured an Asian American rock band being denied registering the name The Slants, and the Supremes ruled in favor of The Slants, saying that basically you're stepping all over the First Amendment by trying to legislate what you can and can't register. So that was a big win for free speech.
Sure.
Big win for the Redskins.
Yes. Yeah. I mean...
I guess when it comes to free speech, you got to take the bad with the good.
Exactly. How you vote on free speech is up to the individual.
Right. And I would still like the marketplace to retire the Redskins, but I guess they have the right to call themselves an offensive racist name if they want.
Yeah, and if the market's not going to punish them for that, then what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah. The Redskins was a storyline in season 3 of Kimmy Schmidt, and they handled it perfectly hilariously. So I recommend everyone seeing that just for that gag. It runs, there's a thread of it that runs through the whole season, and the finish of it is very satisfying. Also, last week, Senator Bernie Sanders and his wife Jane are under investigation for bank fraud involving a loan to purchase land for Burlington College, where Jane was president. They've hired attorneys, including Larry Robbins, who counseled Scooter Libby.
There's a name from the past.
Wow.
When you hire attorneys that represented Scooter...
Well, when you're a grown man and you still go by Scooter,
yeah,
you've made some bad life choices.
That's been interesting.
It has. Because it's Bernie Sanders who is the champion of, tearing down the banks and sticking it to the man. And see, hopefully there is no smoke to it because I like Bernie Sanders, the man. But, some of his ideas are way out there for my liking. But, yeah, I would hate to see anything come of that. Also, last week it was announced that Damon Lindelof, the man behind Lost and The Leftovers, is making a Watchmen series for HBO. I don't know how to feel about this at all.
Miniseries?
Oh, you guys have not heard?
I saw a little bit about it. It immediately made me think of the Watchmen prequel books that DC tried to do.
Yeah.
No one wanted to read.
Watchmen Begins
or
whatever.
Yeah.
Origin stories for the comedian.
Some stories just have to stand alone. And for those who've only seen the movie, I mean, the whole point of the Watchmen, in a way, was all of those characters already had backstories.
And
they were characters from Charlton Comics that DC had purchased and were originally going to be used in their original forms. So Night Owl would have been the Blue Beetle.
Mm-hmm.
Rorschach would have been the Question. So these are characters that came with their own baggage. So to then go back and write a different prequel continuity to them sort of undermines what the point of the Watchmen was. And obviously it didn't end up using those characters because DC decided they wanted those characters, and didn't really want to throw them away.
Well, what DC did in the 80s was we have all these weird characters. Let's give Doom Patrol to Grant Morrison and put his weirdly fantastic spin on it. And we'll give these guys to Alan Moore and let him do his batshit crazy things with them.
Yeah.
And the Sandman, Neil Gaiman, we'll give him that. And go nuts, fellas. And that's how you got the Vertigo line. And the Watchmen kind of set up the Vertigo line.
Yeah.
No Watchmen, or if Watchmen was a huge failure, there'd be no Vertigo line.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have got some really great stuff.
So I know that the Watchmen movie was much maligned. What are your guys' thoughts on it?
I think it undeservedly. I really enjoyed The Watchmen.
Yeah.
I did. Okay.
I think it was adapted as well as it could have been.
Yeah, Zack Snyder's best work, in my opinion. And probably because he stuck so close to the book. Everyone was kind of butthurt because he changed the ending. And I'll say it, his ending was better.
Yeah.
Yes.
The end
made more sense.
The ending of the actual book, pretty batshit.
Yeah,
Like
very
batshit beyond what the book was to begin with.
very Alan Moore, what the hell stuff.
Yeah.
And we'd hate to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read one of the 100 greatest novels in American history. It made that list.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Did it?
Yeah. I mean, it is a work of art.
Sure.
The weak point of the comic book was probably Dave Gibbons' art.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
yeah.
it wasn't that weak even, but for the quality of the book.
Yeah. And also it was back in the mid 80s when panel layout was very, very boring. And
yeah,
it's tough to, that's one thing if you read modern comics.
It was a little bit like reading like one of those books that collects peanut strips.
Yes.
was that straight.
It was very basic. Even the dramatic moments, like when Dr. Manhattan reveals himself, it was like only 2 by 3 columns.
Yeah.
Today, it would have been a center gate fold spread. And so, yeah, it was kind of laid out boring, but the story and all the divergent stories that came off of it, you know, the pirate ship, Behind the Mask, all those stories that were so great and really built that world and that universe. I don't know how you're going to replicate that even with a TV series.
No, I don't see it working well.
And are they just going to readapt the core material, or are they going to build on it? How?
It's Damon Lindelof. Who the hell knows? I mean, Damon Lindelof is such a divisive figure in entertainment because he'll take these hard lefts and never explain why he took that hard left. He did a much better job in The Leftovers. I don't know if that's his maturity as a writer or if somebody was putting the brakes on him and saying, hey, let's not do Lost again. We like the way your mind works. Just don't do that again. Or don't do it that way.
Yeah, we could end up with a Watchmen series where we never find out who the villain is.
Yeah. All I have to say to all the showrunners, good luck trying to find a better Rorschach than Jackie Earle Haley.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That is going to be the most important casting decision that they make because pretty much the Watchmen
is so central.
It's almost his perspective, almost entirely.
Yeah.
So good luck with that, fellas.
There are times, and I don't want to extend this conversation forever.
Too late.
There are times when I wonder how differently we would look at that book if he had been allowed to use the characters from Charlton directly.
Yeah.
You know, if it had been Captain Atom, if it had been the Question. But then again, you also have to wonder if the Question would mean to us now what it does.
Oh, it would have been totally... If it landed in Alan Moore's hands, God only knows. But if it landed in, like, say, a J.M. DeMatteis' hands, and he was tasked with doing that, we would get something really cool, but not Watchmen level cool.
Yeah.
So, but that's not what anybody was talking about this week.
No.
But
I don't even know how he got onto that.
before we dive into this, I have to take you to task. Chris, you didn't identify yourself
I did
again.
not introduce myself as Chris Gill, who's just kind of here. God damn it, I do it every week. So the Senate had the secret healthcare bill, and they released the healthcare bill. And
it was better when it was secret.
Yeah.
It was better in the Congress.
In many ways.
So let's see. This went down, Wednesday? They released it? Wednesday or Thursday. And ever since, I mean, it's been a firestorm of shit.
A shit firestorm?
A shit firestorm.
Is that like flaming turds raining from the sky?
You know what? Use your imagination. We just write the words.
Shit
Let
fire.
your imagination
Shit
just fill in the
firestorm.
rest.
That's a failed DC character.
The Senate healthcare bill takes direct aim on Medicaid. Oh my God. James is easily amused.
I'm just picturing what shit firestorm's costume would look like.
I think it would be red and brown.
Would he be made of 3 different personalities?
I don't know that we have to make him schizophrenic, but
All right.
it seems like we're creating our own character. So anyway, the Senate's healthcare bill really seems to take direct aim on Medicaid.
Yeah. The CBO hasn't scored it yet, but this is going to cut millions and millions of dollars from Medicaid.
The basic gist is they want to slash the hell out of Medicaid and then offer tax credits in savings accounts for health.
Yeah, which always works well for a class of people who can't save.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
There's been so much spin out there. And you know, the people who have been able to boil this down to what it actually says, I really respect. And, you know, there's been some of those people on Twitter. Vox has done a good job, as they always do.
They are fantastic.
But I mean, it's fundamentally, we're going to phase out the Medicaid expansion, and then we're going to cut Medicaid beyond that.
Yeah.
Because although they continue year over year growth, they do it at the rate of regular inflation, not healthcare inflation, which is going to be a massive cut that is only going to compound.
And here's how there's the message coming from the White House, which was President Trump is committed to making sure no one in Medicaid is affected in any way, which is reflected in this bill. And then you have our representative, Tom Reed, who went on MSNBC and told Joy Reid, this will empower the people rather than expanding government to a point where it's not sustainable. American taxpayers can't foot the bill endlessly and without a limitation because they are tapped out. So now you can't even, the Republicans can't even get the same message right with this thing.
Yeah, and the taxpayers who are apparently tapped out are the ones who benefit from this cut, because the other side of this is a massive cut in basically capital gains tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not called capital gains tax, but it's a component of that.
Yes.
It repeals the 3.8% capital gains tax. For 90% of American households, they will see no tax benefit at all. For the top 0.1%, they will get an average of $165,000 tax cut.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat, this may have been Vox as well, that the wealthiest 400 families in the country will see a tax cut of $33 billion.
It was a very cleverly disguised new tax plan, essentially.
Yeah. And it's much more a tax bill than it is a healthcare bill.
Right.
And more of the money that is moving around is being moved around in the tax code than is being moved around in healthcare.
Yes.
It's almost like the Senate Republicans said, our colleagues in the House are really taking some heat over their healthcare plan. Let's give them some cover by releasing a worse one.
Yeah, and I just don't know where it goes from here.
There are 5 GOP senators that have come out against it?
Vox counted 9.
Oh, we're up to 9 now.
Yes.
Okay.
Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and Ron Johnson on the conservative side.
Yep.
And then on the moderate side, if there are any moderate Republicans left.
In the Senate there are.
Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Dean Heller, Rob Portman, Shelley Moore Capito, all have serious concerns. Some dealing with the Planned Parenthood cuts.
Yeah.
Some dealing with the Medicaid cuts themselves. So they need 7 of these 9?
Yeah.
To get this passed.
And the question has been, since this when this counting first started, it was 4 and then it was 5. And my question was always, Heller we know.
Heller was the first one to come out against this thing right out of the gate.
He's got to be a no.
Yeah.
Is he a hard no, or is he?
I think he's a hard no.
He's a hard no. He is a senator who is up for re-election in a state that Hillary won. I don't think Mitch McConnell or anybody else wants him to be a yes.
Yeah.
They want to keep his seat.
Right.
The others, I don't know if they want something.
Ted Cruz is against it. He wants something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is just shifty as hell.
When you talk about Susan Collins, when you talk about Shelley Moore Capito, I don't know if those are hard no's too.
Yeah, and Murkowski as well.
Murkowski, yeah.
The Planned Parenthood thing has got to be troubling for the female senators that are in the no column right now,
or just any senators,
right,
that have hearts. If you have a heart and care about your constituents, you're probably against this thing.
I mean,
now we talked last week about not demonizing people for their beliefs.
Right.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that this bill was put together thinking that some kind of market force would drive healthcare costs down. That's got to be the theory behind it, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm not saying that I can interpret whatever good intentions might have been behind it. But I can't allow myself to believe that this group of elected officials intentionally put together a bill the aim of which was to hurt people.
Or just to benefit the richest 1%.
Well, I could see them just wanting to benefit. I could see them wanting to benefit the wealthy. That's not
trickle-down healthcare?
Not fundamentally a bad thing. Depending on how you feel about class politics, helping the wealthy, and it's not necessarily a zero-sum game. It doesn't have to be. In this case, it turns out to be.
Yeah, and I've struggled with this all week. The intent. Is the intent really to try to reform Medicaid, which is a train wreck? I mean, it's funding it at the current levels for much longer, and you're going to have a big problem. So was that the intent? If that was their sole concern, okay, fine, but you're doing it wrong. Or if you're more cynical, you're like, oh, okay, so this is how you get your tax breaks for the wealthy.
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know where the intent lies between those 2 points.
That's one thing I think is interesting is that this bill, which we thought was going to be rewritten entirely from scratch, keeps the Democrat titled Buffalo buyout.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the per capita.
The Faso and Collins written thing that basically makes it so that states like New York can't pass off Medicaid costs to counties. They have to pay for it at the state level, which immediately, if this takes effect, puts a $2.3 billion hole in the New York state budget.
Yeah. Yeah. And other states are, obviously are not doing as well as New York. New York is one of the states that's doing really well right now. I mean, if you're...
As you can tell by the migration out of the state.
Well,
as far as,
you have to look at the state as a whole, though.
Yeah.
The money comes from downstate. So, that's one thing, being in upstate, you constantly have to have this argument with people who believe that their tax money goes to Albany where it goes to poor black people downstate.
Right.
Like, no money goes from upstate to downstate.
No.
None. Zero. Absolutely zero.
But in, say, like Kentucky or Kansas or, one of the states that are really struggling, that's a death knell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I struggle with intent. Why would you do this and basically put states into bankruptcy?
I mean, and you mentioned states like Kansas. I've got to believe that a lot of this is just shifting the burden onto states. So aren't these Republican senators hearing from their brethren in the state houses in places like Kansas and Kentucky saying, what are you doing to us?
Who's going to run against them? I mean, the Democrats that run against them are always pretty bad, and nobody's going to primary them.
Yeah, and there's also the fact that Medicaid is very complicated.
Yeah.
New York has an incredibly comprehensive version of Medicaid. They basically, every program that is available under Medicaid is available in New York. It's not that way in every state. And other states could be in a position where they could reduce the level of Medicaid coverage they provide.
Including pregnancy services.
Yeah. In order to make up some of that gap. A lot of the vitriol coming out of Albany, particularly from Governor Cuomo, is, New York's not willing to make those cuts. New York is going to stick with the level of Medicaid services it has, and is just going to be stuck with a budget shortfall.
So we've got 9 senators saying they have problems with this bill. They need 7 of them to flip. So now the horse trading comes?
Yeah. And I just don't see it working. Every change you make on one side shifts people on the other. Yeah,
if you're going to flip Murkowski and Collins, you're going to lose the Freedom Caucus, I've got to believe.
Yeah.
And
this was put together to be as close as they could get to something that would get 50 votes, and it doesn't have it. And I don't see any changes affecting that much. It may change the final count. I don't think there are any changes that get this to 50.
From what I've read, I think it was 538. The House is pretty much the reconciliation process is going to be pretty nominal. The House is going to vote on whatever version the Senate comes up with.
Yeah. And in a way, they're kind of stuck with that on reconciliation, because if the House makes any more changes, then they're starting over.
Right. So we've already counted one hard no. So I think Nate Silver at 538 gave an even 50-50 shot at passing and becoming law. You were saying less than that?
I think it's less than that.
Okay. At some point, this is going to have to affect the polls come 2018 and certainly 2020.
People are already running commercials on it.
We got a hint of it with the Georgia 6.
Oh.
What was the margin of victory?
I believe it was 6. The votes are still being counted.
Okay.
I believe it is handled by 6. That's a fluid number right now, but this was This was a race that the Democrats spent a ton of money on.
Yeah, they learned their lessons after the first two special elections.
Right. They opened up their pocketbooks and spent. They thought this was a winnable district. Not so much. So now the Democrats are 0 for 4 in Special Olympics.
Well,
Yeah, right?
it can be applicable.
Special
the political
election,
version of the Special Olympics.
special elections in which
DNC headquarters.
a House member was chosen as part of the Trump administration, so they had an open election. Democrats are 0 for 4.
Yeah.
So, if you're a Democrat, if you want to look at it glass half empty, you lost 4, including one in which the Republican candidate body slammed a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But if you're a glass half full Democrat, and you've got to be at this point, otherwise you're going to just crawl up into a ball and cry. These are districts that were considered safe. That's why these people were taken from these districts. They were considered safe.
So you think they're taking solace in anything that looks like a close race?
Well, except for the Georgia 6th, the margin of victory for the special election was much closer than the margin of victory in the general.
Yeah. South Carolina. I mean,
Right. Let me get those numbers. Okay, so South Carolina 5th. Trump won it by 18.5 points. The GOP candidate won it by 3. The Montana special election, Trump won it by 20.5 points. The GOP candidate, Gianforte, the body slammer, won it by 6.1 points. The Kansas 4th.
Don't give him the nickname Body Slammer. It's just going to help him.
Because we've already established on this very podcast it wasn't an actual body slam.
No.
Trump won the Kansas 4th by 27.2 points. Ron Estes, the Republican, won it by 6.8 points. Now, the old saying is all politics is local. But are we seeing a trend here? Are we seeing...
Well, another interesting development, Paul Ryan's looks like he could have a hell of a fight on his hands keep his seat.
I've seen the commercial.
He has a Democrat who is an Army veteran and union iron worker that's running on the Democratic ticket. That could be an absolute slugfest. I mean, it sounds implausible until you remember Eric Cantor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Wisconsin politics, I don't know why would interest me, but holy cow, that race is what I'm looking forward to most in 2018, just to see how that plays out.
Wisconsin politics should interest everyone after the presidential race.
Well, yeah.
Sure. And, going back to the Georgia 6th, the Democrats thought this was winnable, but you look at John Ossoff. He's a 30-year-old former congressional staffer, doesn't even live in the district.
He was a bit of a carpetbagger.
Yeah. And he did not he did not run against Trump strongly. He did not talk a lot about healthcare. He was talking about cutting spending, cutting wasteful spending, and he brought up the whole Susan G. Komen controversy from 5 years ago. He thought that was going to play.
Yeah.
So, he didn't run as a populist. He ran a flawed campaign, and, he lost by a handful, 5 or 6 percentage points. So are you guys seeing trends in this, or are we looking at 4 different, very, very different elections?
It's so hard to judge these special elections because everybody has so much more time and effort to put into them that it's hard to draw any conclusions that would be reflected in a regular general election.
And you get historically low turnout for these kinds of elections, the special elections, because it's off cycle.
Yeah.
But
historically high spending.
Yes.
Rose-colored glasses. Yeah, there's absolutely a trend. People, I think, are getting fed up with their representation. They see that, they finally seem to be wising up to the idea that the White House, while it's the most important house in the land, that's not where things happen. Things are happening in Congress and the Senate, and it seems like voters may be waking up to that.
Do you think Trump has had a role in that? Do you think the difference between the chaos out of the White House and the things, and at least in relative terms, actually happening in the House and Senate has clued people in that the president doesn't run everything?
I think that may have been the thought process during Obama's 2 terms, because very little was able to get done, and anything that did get done got through by the skin of its teeth because it was just so awful. Nothing, no bills got signed. It was a terrible era, and it's not Barack Obama's fault. And then they have this guy that comes in with all this bravado, says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to change this, I'm going to build a wall. He gets in there and can't do a damned thing. And I think, yes, people have seen that, and they're probably getting wise to this.
I think low information voters are getting a civics lesson.
Yeah.
On how government works and how little power the president actually has. As Chris said, I think Donald Trump came in with all these promises. 100 days passed and he accomplished 0 of them. He signed some executive orders, but none of his big agenda items are even close to being passed. So, yeah, I think people are waking up to the fact that the real juice is in Congress.
Yeah.
Will that translate to increased turnout in 2018? I don't know.
It depends on the candidate.
I mean, a year is a lifetime in politics.
Yeah. My God, lately, a week. Like, we struggle with this podcast trying to keep it current. We should have started this thing 8 years ago when things moved so slowly that we would have been right on the curve, and things are happening so fast. I mean, we haven't even talked about the Russian investigation, mainly because nothing big happened there.
No.
Yeah.
But that's a thing that's happening, and that would dominate a podcast forever because that was the only thing going on. And this one, it's every week we've had a new topic.
Yeah. So, in the Georgia 6th, one of the things that Republican strategists say worked for them against Ossoff was tying him to Nancy Pelosi.
Okay.
So now they're
Great
saying...
segue.
Now they're saying they're going to focus on Pelosi again in the midterms. That's what they're going to be hitting, Democrats with in TV ads is Pelosi.
Smart.
Which, has been the case for a decade now. She's the face of evil Democrats.
Yeah.
Okay. So Republicans tie Democrats to Pelosi. Democrats tie Republicans to Trump. Who do you think wins that? I like our chances on that,
Well, yeah, but
you got to look at the numbers.
Trump's polling at 37% favorability.
Okay, Tim Ryan of Ohio, who ran against Pelosi in a challenge for the leadership last year.
yeah, I forgot about it.
He's the one who's been out there lately saying that she's a drag on the party. He's couching it in I have the greatest respect for her and all that kind of stuff. But he says that we're going into the midterms with a, quote, damaged leader. That's what he said on Meet the Press this morning. And he said last week that there are areas of the country where Pelosi is more toxic to voters than Trump is.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
All right, so looping back to the Georgia 6th and tying it into that, Democrats are kind of faced with a choice.
And notably in that race, Ossoff did not run against Trump.
No, he did not. Democrats are faced with whether they go after the Hillary Clinton voters, which are college-educated whites, or they go after the Bernie Sanders voters, who are blue-collar voters. If they decide to go after the Hillary Clinton, the suburban white college-educated voters, I don't think Pelosi hurts them.
No.
I think
But
Pelosi...
is that enough voters to win?
And people are...
It wasn't...
It depends on the district.
Yeah, it depends on the district. It wasn't in 2016, obviously.
Yeah.
But it goes back to people being fed up with their representation. This is why Republicans are so good at politics. Tying any challengers to Nancy Pelosi is, look, more of the same.
Yeah.
And that's just such an easy, brilliant message to send. So maybe the Democrats have to look at unseating her.
But I think...
And, she, for all that I think, and a lot of insiders think, she's not really in any danger of a leadership challenge. She was out there in front of cameras talking up her own accomplishments this week.
Yeah, that's a bad...
And, in a way that made it seem like she was afraid for her job.
Yeah.
I would like to think that come fall 2018, Donald Trump will have made such a hash of this country that the swing voters, the ones that are going to decide the next election, are going to say, all right, we've tried inexperience. Look where it got us. Maybe having a career politician in office isn't such a bad thing. Donald Trump is talking about passing a bill that has been law since the 90s. He obviously,
You've got to explain that one.
I saw the headline. I don't know the explanation.
He talked about, we're going to make it so that legal immigrants can't receive welfare or other sorts of means-tested aid for 5 years after they enter the country. We're going to start working on that legislation today. We're going to get it in front of Congress. That's been the law since the 1996 welfare reform. No one told the president, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? I mean, the way the guy just pops off, that was probably not written anywhere. Like, that probably just came off the top of his head.
Yeah.
And there was an aide somewhere off camera, massaging their temples because their job is so awful.
Well, speaking of off camera, somebody else has been off camera for the last, week and a half, 2 weeks. That's Sean Spicer.
Oh, yes.
And I want to thank you, Chris, for, I think it was you who I saw retweeting John Hodgman's.
Mic drop.
Post out.
Yeah.
Bear with us, ladies.
I'm going handheld.
Oh, wow.
It was you that I saw retweeting John Hodgman's comment about CNN using a courtroom sketch artist to give people visuals of the press briefing.
Yeah, and his response was, no, you take your cameras in there, you get kicked out, you come back and you do it again the next day and keep doing it. Forget your stupid fucking life hack and, grow a spine. Stand up to them. And, of course they won't because they're spineless.
But, it's one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is that we've all been journalists. How do you feel about, at what point do you give the finger to the person that you're relying on for information?
The press, especially in this White House with all the leaks, have been doing just fine getting a lot of information.
Yeah.
If there is an administration that you could go up against, this would be the one, because there are plenty of people out there that want to talk about what the hell's really going on.
Well, I guess my point is, and going beyond just the idea of, we're going to come in with our cameras and get kicked out as a protest. There have been people long before the camera thing, back when people were first starting to learn that the information that was coming from the White House press office was often not accurate.
Oh, you mean Inauguration Day?
Yeah.
Forward, yes.
People saying that the press corps just shouldn't attend the briefings. I think the danger in that is if the briefings go away, do they ever come back?
Yeah, exactly. All these changes and things that are happening, even let's say in Fantasyland, that Democrats take back the House and the Senate, and you get a Democratic president. Are some of these things ever coming back? I mean, there's an awful lot that's being done and talked about being done, and we still have 3.5 years. Who knows what could be undone? How much of that stuff is ever going to come back?
Yeah, because as much as some Democrats, even some non-Democrats, might look back at the Obama era as the good old days at this point.
Yeah.
Obama wasn't that friendly to the press. He was cracking down on press coverage even versus his predecessor, George W. Bush.
Yep. Who, in his defense,
it's not a Republican thing to want to reduce press access.
W loved the cameras.
Yeah,
he genuinely enjoyed going out there and interacting with the press.
Yeah,
and
Obama never was. Obama held, when Obama held a press conference, it was a big deal.
He talked to you like a professor would.
Yeah,
I've got to believe that's a personality thing versus a policy decision.
But he did it so infrequently.
There were other ways in which press access to things that they normally had access to, whether it was events, fundraisers, things like that. A lot of that got curtailed under his administration.
It's slowly been going away, especially since the adoption of computing devices in everyone's pockets 24/7.
Yeah,
you're just like you said, we could be looking at a country without press briefings, and that it's
even if 3.5 years from now, a perfect clone of Franklin Roosevelt is elected president,
minus the polio.
And no, keep the polio. That's
okay,
part of his.
It humanizes him.
Yeah. Even if the perfect Democratic president is elected in 3.5 years,
Jed Bartlett.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
There you go. He had his conservative tendencies. Whole other conversation. I can certainly see, if there hasn't been a press briefing for 3 years at that point, bringing back the White House press briefing as a sign of openness. But in a lot of other ways, I think precedents that have been set under this administration as far as press policy are probably going to stay in place no matter who follows up.
Yeah, sadly.
Because if you're in power, you don't want to answer to people.
No.
No matter how good your intentions are, you want people out of your face while you're doing the good things you believe you're doing.
I think it's more of a function of everybody having a recording device on them at all times.
Sure.
Because that has burned so many politicians.
It may have cost Mitt Romney an election.
Exactly. I mean, that's the perfect example of why maybe they're being much more secretive now.
Yeah, but you're safer with the press. That's
safer than
with the general public. The press has established relationships they have to maintain. The press you can say off the record to, and if they want to keep working, they have to hold to that. You have protections with the press because of their ethics that you don't have with Joe Schmo with his cell phone recorder. So, it seems like you'd want to be dealing with the press and, not... Because the leaks are the more you shut out the press, the more you lie to their face, the more leaks there's going to be. And those people aren't bound by ethics or they wouldn't be leakers.
Well, notice how few leakers you had in the Obama White House.
Yeah.
compared to this White House. And this White House obviously is a function of the leader not turning over the staff in a remotely timely manner, and then wondering why he has so many leaks.
Yeah, but it's
dipshit.
if you believe what some of the press who've written based on these leaks say, not all of these leaks are coming from Obama appointees.
No,
I'm sure probably most of them are,
especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
In the beginning, yeah, it was.
I'm sure
but I'm not sure leaks is the biggest downside of failing to fill up your government in the first 6 months of your administration. When there's no deputy secretary of state for anything, and it's almost July.
But that's the byproduct that irks the administration the most.
Yeah.
And if you're irked by, if you have a stone in your shoe, you remove the goddamn stone. and they keep walking around with a ton of rocks in their shoes.
Yeah.
Because they don't remove them.
But you said he should get his rocks off.
Yes.
I think it's a function of, who you can convince the president to trust.
Well,
that's why it's so hard to fill all those positions, because this is a president who believes in loyalty. And how do you test the loyalty of the other, 1,800 people you still need to hire?
And on the subject of trust, and shifting gears, Kathleen Kennedy, who runs Lucasfilm, who makes all the Star Wars movies, no longer trusts Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. Lord and Miller are the team that did the Lego movie. They launched Last Man on Earth on Fox. They did the 21 and 22 Jump Streets. This is a comedy writing duo, and what they do it like no one else. Yeah. They just have a great sense of timing, great sense of story, great sense of character. And they were entrusted to do the Han Solo movie. They did all the casting.
That 3 times.
Yeah. They did all the casting and started shooting in February. And they were dumped last week. Just, they tried to make it seem like it was a mutual parting of ways for creative differences. But
they were left on the curb with a free sign on them, like a couch.
And James dropped his mic again and then hit his head on the arm mic stand.
I really don't know what's going on here.
Literally, our podcast is coming apart at the seams.
In so many ways.
Yeah.
It's about fucking time.
So this movie is scheduled for a May 18th of 2018 release. And Kennedy and the writing staff are, we're right up against it. So they went out and grabbed Ron Howard to finish this movie.
They found him at a grocery store.
Well, Howard...
Oh, wait, it's Ron Howard. You want to do a movie? I got nothing else to do.
In the 80s, 90s, and the aughts, Howard was quickly... he was starting to outpace Spielberg in terms of quality of film and number of films. And, man, he really fell off in these last 8-9 years, even though I loved the Rush movie.
Yeah.
But I'm erasing it. So...
Did you say you're a racist?
See, there he goes again. So anyway, Lord and Miller are gone. And apparently, tonally, it was so counter to what Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Empire Strikes Back and episode 7, and his son, where this was part of the deal for bringing Kasdan back in. He's like, okay, got to get my son in on this too. And they're like, fine, whatever, just come help us. It was so bad that they looked through all the footage that they had already shot and were like, we can't do this. And it's just really shocking to me that you would go out and get a team like Lord and Miller to put their stamp on a Star Wars property and then be like, oh, we don't like your style.
Well,
if you wanted Ron Howard, why didn't you just sign fucking Ron Howard in the beginning?
But it's so hard to say what happened when those guys with their dynamic and their experience came to a property like that, and whether they froze up and just weren't doing good work, whether they suddenly were so overwhelmed by the gravity of doing a Han Solo movie that the sort of freewheeling nature of what they'd done before was lost.
All reports point to tonally, it was very much a 21 Jump Street Lego movie type
Really?
farcical adventure.
Which would work with Han Solo.
Yeah, that's why
I almost want a Star-Lord.
Yeah, that's why they cast Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. I mean, Donald Glover is one of the funniest guys on the planet.
Yeah.
And what kind of movie did you think you were going to get?
Yeah, and I don't know what kind of movie they're going to want out of Ron Howard.
They're going to want to paint by numbers. And if that was the case, why spend the money on Ron Howard? There are plenty of other directors that can paint by the numbers.
Lots of journeymen out there who'd like the work, who could work a lot cheaper.
Yeah, The Force Awakens had its problems. Kathleen Kennedy was not happy with how that was progressing, so she brought Cassidy in. Disney was not happy with Rogue One and how bleak the first cut was, so they brought somebody else in to cut the film and tack on that.
Made it not bleak enough.
And tacked on that amazing final 5 minutes. Because that was never in the original script. That was tacked on because they were like, well, we need a bridge to A New Hope. And somebody's, oh, I got your bridge. So it just...
So you're saying trust the studio heads? Because they haven't really made a bad move yet.
Exactly. So far, it's like that. I would think this also sends a message to any other directors that they want to get. It's like, oh, yeah, we want your personal stamp on this within this very small box.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, in general, what these decisions that they've made have produced pretty good movies.
Yeah.
But the idea of a movie being made from the head office like that, instead of being made by a director and a DP and an editor and the creatives, is a little troubling.
It is. And we saw the same thing at Marvel when they had Edgar Wright, who is brilliant. Everything he does, his worst movie is still incredibly interesting. And they were like, you're not using the right brushes that we laid out for you. You're doing something else that doesn't fit with our universe. So now we're going to go get somebody who's going to play ball.
Yeah.
And I still want to see Edgar Wright's Ant-Man.
Yeah.
So what'd you guys do fun this week? Anything cool?
I had a cold all week, so I pretty much just took a lot of cold medicine.
So fun stuff.
Yeah, well.
Robo tripping?
Oh, God. Remember the days when you used to drink an 8-ounce bottle of Robitussin?
I loved being 30. But James, anything?
I'm nearly finished with Yakuza 0, which I think we've discussed on this show before. Yep. I'm at the point where I can go to the final battle, but unfortunately, I need to take some time out and build up my Hostess Club empire before I can do that, because I don't want to miss out on that side quest.
Naturally.
So, we gotta. I want to say pimp those hoes, but it's written.
You said it.
The hostess clubs in Japanese culture, it's like going out to dinner or to a bar and having somebody pretend to be your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like when I went to prom.
Like,
yeah, pretty much.
You don't touch the merchandise. They will fuck you up. Like, these are not prostitutes by any stretch of the imagination.
And probably run by the Yakuza.
Interestingly enough.
I finished Orange is the New Black Season 5. Ended a bit controversial for my liking. I really don't want to spoil it, but it was probably their strongest season since Season 2, and they buggered it up in the last seconds.
And then rocks fall, everybody dies.
It was very disappointing. So I finished that, and I started The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling on Netflix.
And?
Fun.
Okay.
Not a home run.
Okay. Ground rule double?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give it a double. It's
it's so... There's so much media to consume nowadays
Yeah.
Unless something is a stand-up triple,
Right.
it's easy. I haven't started Gotham. Gotham should be in my wheelhouse.
Gotham's terrible.
That's not what I've heard.
Really? Okay. I mean, judge for yourself when you see it. I made it halfway through season 1, and it was total garbage.
Okay.
It's never getting me back.
I'm as an example, that should be, it's a comic book show. It's a prequel to Batman. I should love this, and I don't even have time for it.
Yeah.
So, finding time for
Yeah, I get it. I like new, and I have a voracious appetite for new things. And so anytime there's a new series on Netflix, I'm going to just devour it. At least give it a chance. And with the gorgeous ladies of wrestling, it's like, of course I'm going to watch that.
Well, it's 80s women's wrestling.
Oh, and they lean heavy into the 80s nostalgia. You know how Stranger Things used it as a backdrop?
Yeah.
No, they are leaning hard into it, which, depends on your sensibilities. It's not mine, but. So what are we looking forward to this week?
I should be finishing up The Flash. And Spider-Man's not this week, but next week.
Yep.
Maybe I'll get out to see Wonder Woman this week.
The opening reviews for Spider-Man Homecoming have been very good.
Well, I love the fact that Robert Downey Jr. plays such a big role in it, or at least if the trailers can be believed.
Right.
I mean, it seems like a buddy cop almost kind of atmosphere.
What really would have liked to see Spidey carry this on his own just to prove that the actor can do it.
Yeah, you got to get him established. I mean, you got 20 minutes of him in Civil War?
Yeah, but who else in the Marvel Universe got training wheels in their first movie?
Black Panther?
Yeah.
Although
That's not out yet.
It wasn't his movie. I mean, God, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
I'm just psyched we don't have to see Uncle Ben die again.
Yeah.
Yeah, not another origin story and not a Sony standalone thing.
Right.
The fact that Marvel has input on it it settles your nerves a little about it. So, yeah, with or without Robert Downey Jr., with Marvel's creative input, I think we would have had a pretty decent movie anyway. So, yeah, I'm really anxious to see that.
Chris, what are you looking forward to this week?
Next weekend is the Sailing 6 Hours at the Glen. It is an endurance race, the third in the North American Endurance Championship Series. And it's probably the best weekend at Watkins Glen. It's 5 different series, including the main event, which has 4 different classes of cars. And it's just 4 days and 3 nights of race cars, good buddies, and booze. So I don't know how we're going to record this podcast next week because I'm going to be in terrible shape.
So pretty much status quo.
Yeah.
Worse shape.
How much do you really contribute?
Just the intro. That's really it. James, are you going to make it up to the Glen? I know you have in the past.
Got to be working.
Okay. I would have saved you a drink, but now I'm going to drink it instead.
Okay.
So if you like in any way what you hear, please share our links on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. Hit us up on Twitter. We'd love your input. Send us emails about story ideas. Just let us know you're out there. We're so lonely. We're 3 men in a room.
Well, not only that, but there are topics that we may miss that fall through the cracks that we would love to have brought to our attention. And if there's something important to you, share it with us so we can talk about it. And we'll give you due cred. We're not jerks.
I'm kind of a jerk.
Only after a couple beers. Before then, you're a nice guy.
I'm more of a sociopath.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally see that. Okay.
Play us out, Chris?
No, that's James's job.
Seriously, shut the fuck up.